Choosing Home by ginnyrules27. Chapter 25. Claudine stared at her brother in shock, almost unable to comprehend what he had told her. Granted, it had already been a bit of a shock to come back from Dragonhall to see a pink-wearing, blonde-haired, having cream puff cake of a princess sitting where she usually sat. But then to hear that... I'm sorry, what? You've lost your damn mind over there in Borodon if you think I'm going to just sit back and let you gift wrap my position in this gang to her? You've got to be joking! She exclaimed once the ability to speak came back to her. Does it look like I'm joking, Claudine? Freddy asked with a smirk. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you don't know the meaning of a joke. I was hoping you'd have the common sense God gave a housefly and not do something like this. Of all the ideas you've come up with, Fred, this has got to be the most ridiculous, Claudine growled. Whatever do you mean, Claudine? I'm tired of how soft you've made the gang while I was gone. So I decided it was time we had a new second in command. Just so happened I knew the perfect person, too, Freddy said, the smirk still present. Claudine grit her teeth, her hands curled into fists. My soft approach was the reason you had a gang to come back to, Fred. I kept the gang alive. I kept us from being decimated after you made us the laughingstock of the Isle. And this is how you repay me? You want me to give up my spot to her? She won't last one day on the Isle, let alone a second in command. You can't get the gang to stop fighting for more than 5 minutes. You couldn't get Strat to listen to you, which resulted in Zevon, of all people, getting the drop on him and hitting him with a potion. Why should I repay you for doing your job and doing it poorly? And I wouldn't be too quick to judge Audrey. She managed to get a Borodon Royal crying in mere seconds. I think the fact that we shoved Chad into a closet had something to do with it. Audrey chuckled. If one looked closely, they could see Morgan rolling her eyes in the background, trying not to draw attention to herself. Freddy shook his head and chuckled. God, the level of weakness in Borodon will never cease to amaze me. Ben tried to claim I should have known since we were friends for so long. Claustrophobia? Ha! Just another word for weakness. Claudine stared in shock. So this was the girl who managed to keep Fred loyal for 9 months. The girl who somehow got him unable to have a fling with an Isle girl. The one who caused him to look towards Orodon when he thought no one was looking, and therefore missed Claudine noticing it. The one who earned Shayla and Lachlan's ire, considering they were still glaring at the girl. It made sense. He managed to take an Orodon girl and twist her to someone exactly like him. Nothing else would ever compare for Fred. Claudine knew her brother after all. Or at least she thought she did. There had been no reaction to Audrey coming to the Isle without their kid after all. Though Claudine knew that didn't necessarily mean something. Fred could just be plotting, which was probably the most dangerous thing he could do. Fine. If you really want to make that choice, Fred, go right ahead. But don't think Miss Pink over here will be able to look at me for pointers on how to keep the girls from tearing each other apart, because I am done! Claudine snarled, marching towards the door. You walk out that door, you're dead, Claudine, Freddy warned, causing Claudine to pause. You're the one who's always trying to cash in on our familial bond, and yet you're abandoning your own brother, the mother of your niece. Not very sisterly of you. You haven't been my brother since you were 9, Claudine growled as she spun on her heel to face him. The only reason I stayed as long as I did was to protect the other girls from you. I clung to the idea that one day I'd get the same loyalty for you as I gave every single day to this gang. So don't you dare try to pull the family card now. I should have done this years ago, but I'm doing it now. Angry tears prickled in the corner of her eyes, but Claudine continued to glare at Freddy. I have done everything for you. I've gotten stabbed trying to keep Strat from killing you. I kept our gang alive so you'd have something to come back to. But if you want to just toss me to the side now that your fling is here, I'm done. And I'll tell you what I think of you too. You're a monster. You're sick. I've been ashamed to call you my brother ever since you made that comment about CJ when she was 13. Claudine, Morgan said softly, but Claudine held up a hand, indicating that she had this. The rats should have let Harry kill you for that. So don't come crying to me when you've got a sword in your gut because you're so busy trying to keep your precious new fling alive. I won't be there to take the fall this time. Claudine snarled before taking a breath and looking at Morgan. I won't blame you if you don't want to leave, Morgan, she said, taking in the other girl's wide-eyed and scared face. But I'm leaving. For better or worse, I'm through with calling myself an angel. Especially since all our hard work, went to make sure we weren't considered jokes, is going down the drain with this cream puff as second in command. You can stay if you want, but you deserve better than this. Morgan bit her lip but shook her head, walking toward Claudine and not looking at Freddy or the others. I'm with you. You're right. I should have done this years ago as well, she said, her voice soft as she went to Claudine's side. Both literally and figuratively. Claudine gave her a small smile before looking Freddy right in the eye. Enjoy dealing with Shayla, Lachlan and Strat without me, Fred, because this will be the last time you see me or Morgan. Unless, of course, it's to maybe stick some daggers in us, or your queen brat over there, she added with a small smirk before leading Morgan out of the haven. She wasn't going to lie. It felt good to finally be walking out of the haven and knowing she'd never have to be back. No more sneaking around with Henry. No more holding her tongue when someone said something that was right in describing Freddy. No more using the Frollo name. She could finally be free from him. Of the angels. God, it was so tempting to run straight for Henry and throw her arms around him and give him the biggest kiss she could. But they had to get Brooke first. No one else in the angels knew where the younger girl was, and she needed to know that Morgan and Claudine had defected. You didn't have to do that, you know, Claudine said as they made their way to Brooke's safe house. Of course I did, Morgan told her. Claudine, you are the true leader of the angels. You kept us safe when Freddy was in Borodon. If you needed me to do anything for you, I would have. Just like I know Brooke would have too. Because that's what a true leader does. They get people to follow them because they want to, not because they fear the person. I meant what I said. I should have been brave enough to walk out years ago. Claudine gave her a small smile. Come on. Let's get over to Brooke's safe house, and then I'm requesting a parley with Henry to get you girls back where you belong. Claudine, Brooke and I left the rats. They'd never trust us, Morgan said, looking at Claudine in shock. Besides, we're not leaving you without a gang. Brooke never threw a dagger at them, and when you hit areas where the rats would survive. And I know you aimed for those areas on purpose, Claudine told her, her voice gentle. The rats know this. Well, maybe not on the purpose part. But we can table this conversation for now. We're here. Claudine? Morgan? Get in here before you become hyena or big cat chow. You don't know when they might decide to hunt, Brooke exclaimed, pulling them inside her safe house before Morgan could respond. What are you two doing here? Scuttlebutt is that Fred's fling from Borodon came by today. Yep, Morgan nodded. Hence why we're getting you, duckling. Claudine and I left the Angels. Morgan, you know that's Jade's nickname for me. Wait, what do you mean you left the Angels? Brooke asked as a cat hopped onto the bed. Claudine smiled as she looked over and went over to pet it. Hey, Ash. You keeping Brooke company? She's been the best, Claudine, Brooke said with a smile. I go stir crazy without anyone else here. Claudine smiled as Ash purred at her touch. The grey cat had been the target of the Gaston twins when she was about 9 or 10, and she'd stopped them for turning the cat into their dinner. The Isle didn't have a lot of stray animals, but it did have a few, and Claudine was going to protect this one. She tried to keep Ash in the haven, but since the cat couldn't stand Shayla, Lachlan, Strat or Freddy, Claudine thought it was good to have the cat watch over Brooke when it became necessary to set up a safe house for the younger girl. After Freddy started showing interest after Brooke. No, she was not going to think about that. Freddy's gone mad, Morgan stated. His new fling? He made her second in command. And she's not even a VK. She's a Borodon Royal. Wait, a Borodon Royal is now second in command over the Angels? Brooke asked, astonished at what she had been told. Claudine nodded. Not just any royal. This girl is also the mother of his child, she added, and Brooke's jaw dropped. Yep, Morgan nodded. Claudine sighed. I couldn't take it anymore, Brooke. After everything I did and have done, I couldn't. He wants to get himself and the others killed. That's on him. But what are we going to do? Are we joining the Legume Girl Gang? Brooke asked. I know they're your cousins, but let's get you back to your old stomping grounds, Claudine told her. How much do you two trust me? With my life, Claudine, Morgan told her, Brooke nodding her head. Claudine couldn't help but give those two a sad smile. That wasn't exactly something one heard often on the Isle. In all honesty, it was probably only said by the rats. You said we're going to our old stomping grounds. Will Henry even take us back? Brooke asked. This is Henry we're talking about, Morgan pointed out, but her voice was hesitant. Not to mention Jade would probably kill him if he didn't let you come back, Brooke. But we were angels. After what Fred did to Mal and King Ben, not even Henry would trust us, Brooke said softly, and Claudine's heart broke when she saw Morgan nod a little in agreement. Girls, trust me, okay? I wouldn't suggest something that would put you in harm's way. In fact, I'll go up the gangplank first, and if they shoot us down, when we can talk to Piper and see about you getting the girls to join the Legume Gang. Yeah, that sounds fair, Morgan nodded, and Brooke did too, though she bit her lip. The three girls made their way out of the safe house, Brooke holding on to Ash, and Claudine on the lookout for any big cats or hyenas in the area. So, plan? Morgan muttered to Claudine. You girls stay at the bottom of the gangplank and wait for my signal. Claudine muttered. In fact, hold on to my daggers. What? Why? Claudine didn't even explain as they approached the Lost Revenge. She only handed Morgan her purple-handed daggers and sprinted up the gangplank. Thankfully, she ran right into Henry's arms. Before the redhead could get a word out, Claudine almost smashed her lips into his. Everything seemed to almost click into place, and she didn't even hear the shocked explanations of the rest of the crew. All she could feel were Henry's arms around her, and his lips moving with hers as he registered what was happening. God, this felt so right. Being on the deck of the ship, Henry's arms around her, not needing to sneak away to Dragon Hall to get a few hours of alone time. Just him and her, The real world didn't exist. All that mattered was them. Henry pulled back slowly after a few minutes, slightly shaking his head. You've just blown years of secrecy into Tartarus. You know that? Ahem! Claudine gave Henry a small smile before turning to look at the rest of the crew. What in the world was that? Dustin asked as he, Jake and Nick looked on in shock. What shocked you more, Justin? The fact that Henry just kissed a girl, or who she is? Derek asked as he walked up. Can I say both? Why aren't you shocked, Derek? Henry's your best mate. Because Ryan and I had our suspicions that something like this has been going on. Oh, by the way, as it stands, you and Jake owe the rest of us watch shifts. Jade grinned as she walked up. Gotta say, us finding out by you kissing the girl on the deck of the ship has got to be something none of us expected, Henry. Our innocent boy is growing up. You do remember I'm the captain, right? Henry asked, shaking his head, though one could see a bit of a flush on his cheeks. I certainly didn't plan this. Henry, we've left the Angels. Brooke, Morgan and me. Claudine said softly. Fred's gone completely mad. Can we talk? Of course, Henry nodded, gently leading her towards the captain quarters, and ignoring the knowing smirks of some of his crew's faces. He got to the quarters and closed the door. What happened? Must have been something pretty big for you to just throw everything out of the window like that and flat out kiss me in public. Did he hurt you? Claudine shook her head. Huh? Henry, he made the brat his second in command. I couldn't stay there. Not after everything I did to make sure he had a gang to come back to. He just up and demoted me. And you know, he had the gall to pull the family card as I was walking out. Him, the one who's always been quick to point out we're only half siblings. Like it matters? She took a deep breath and looked back at Henry. So I left. Like I said out there, Morgan and Brooke, they still have a spot with you guys, right? Claudine, we never considered Brooke an angel in the first place. She was always a rat, Henry said, and Morgan may have joined them, but she never killed one of us. That's what I thought, but both girls were worried because they left, that you guys wouldn't let them come back. Understandable, Henry sighed and shook his head, but they've always got a spot here, and you do too. I think after my little display, the crew might just call you insane if you didn't let me stay, Claudine said with a weak chuckle. But if it'll cause problems... It shouldn't cause any problems, Henry said quickly as he shook his head. Sure, Dustin might call us insane, but that might be more because of my having a relationship rather than a fling. You really think I'm letting you walk away from me? Claudine smiled and melted into his arms as Henry pulled her into a hug. You know, we were thinking of joining the Legume Girl gang if we couldn't get a spot here. They've had trouble establishing food spots, Henry said, a sad note colouring his voice. We've done what we can, but I know the older girls are still having to do flings for food. I know, Claudine sighed. It would have been a last resort anyway. How's your back? I didn't hurt you, did I? Henry shook his head. I did what you said. Told Derek about it. He reached out to Mal, who got Lady Persephone to provide this burn cream. It really helped. Good. Claudine smiled and kissed his cheek. The Greys seemed to take us being together well. Honestly, I can't believe they knew, or at least had an idea. I mean, they bet on me. Yes, how dare they? Claudine teased. But we should get back out there. Morgan and Brooke are still hiding by the gangplank, and I think your friends are going to break down the door to talk to you. Henry chuckled, and the two of them went back out onto the deck. Negotiations finished? Jake asked, a teasing note in his voice. Yeah, you can say that, Henry nodded, grinning ear to ear. Claudine smiled and kissed his cheek before looking towards the gangplank. Girls, you can come up now. Coming, Claudine, Morgan called as she and Brooke slowly made their way up onto the gangplank, Brooke still holding Ash in her arms. Brooke gave everyone a small, shy smile before scurrying over to Jade. Claudine had to smile as Morgan went to stand next to Jake. She knew the former rat turned angel turned rat again had had a fling with Jake. Of course she never told anyone. If Freddy had found out. You just ran up the gangplank and kissed Henry? How did you know the other rats wouldn't attack you? That Henry wouldn't shove you off or stab you for the violation of his personal space. You want to tell him, or should I? Henry asked with a small chuckle as he wrapped an arm around Claudine's shoulders. The fact that there wasn't a mutiny as soon as Claudine ran up the gangplank removed probably years of stress from the redhead. Wait, don't tell me. How long has this been going on? Morgan exclaimed, her eyes widening as she looked between them. Probably a couple of years by now, right, Henry? Claudine said, looking up at him with a smile. That sounds about right, Henry nodded. That's how long it's been since the incident, anyway. The incident? Oh, you mean... Oh, Morgan said, nodding and understanding. Explain for the crew members who don't have access to your minds, Nick asked. Strat and Freddy got into one of their many arguments back in the day, and Claudine got in the way when Strat aimed for Fred, Morgan said. Fred patched me up, though it was probably because if he didn't, I'd be worthless in face-offs. And then I went out when I ran into Henry, Claudine added, resting her head on his shoulder. Henry smiled slightly. Angel or not, I'm not going to leave an injured person, and that wound was dangerously close to being fatal. Well, we got to talking, and then he patched me up in Dragon Hall. And, well, one thing led to another. And no, that does not mean what it usually does, Henry added. Are you sure, Henry? Because we thought you'd be marrying your sword, Jake told him. That's not possible. So you say. If it happened with anyone, it would have been you. You trade for 18 hours a day, after all. Bonnie smirked. Not necessarily. After all, his scouting runs last for 6 hours. You know, the nights when Henry didn't come back, and he claimed he crashed in an empty building because it was dark and makes a lot more sense. Henry coughed a bit in embarrassment. Yeah, I crashed in Dragon Hall with Claudine. Nothing happened, we just cuddled, is all. Morgan gave Claudine a small smile. So I'm guessing you weren't really trying to make Fred's assignment happen? Hey, I wasn't lying when I said it was hard. You tried getting a guy with a no-fling policy to break it. I just wasn't actively encouraging him to break it. Besides, I didn't like the idea of pressuring Henry into anything. It should be his position. Wait, so you've been together for 2 years and you never... You know... Why am I not surprised you asked that, Dustin? And for the record, there are under 15s within earshot, Henry said with a fond eye roll. Gods, I'll be happy once they don't have to censor themselves around me, Henry muttered. Not just you, Rye. Brooke's here too. Brooke shrugged slightly. Fred said worse. Still, Dustin knows the rules. No talking about flings or the like in front of under 15s. Henry said. Oh yeah, didn't you once tell me that Uma and Mal strung him up the mast in his underwear after he broke that rule? Claudine asked, trying not to giggle with Dustin right there. You told her about that? Turnabout's fair play, mate. You brought up something personal for us. Something personal gets brought up about you. Henry told him. Dustin sighed, knowing Henry had a point. At least he didn't talk about how he reacted after jumping the previous year. About how it had taken all his willpower not to collapse into a terrified puddle of tears. Everything had hurt. And the crew had seen him like that. Even though Morgan was just the lookout for the angels, she had still been there. Suffice to say, Dustin wasn't exactly comfortable with her being there, but she was still a crew member. I have to say, you're all taking this well, Morgan said softly. What, 3 angels dropping into our crew? Bonnie chuckled. Helps that one of them was never an angel to begin with, the other never killed our crew, and the third, aka a Henry's girl. Henry chuckled. You say that like it's the 9th wonder of the world, Bonnie. With you, it practically is, Henry. Hey, Henry, should we get our new crew members a change of clothes? Derek asked. The angel look doesn't really work on them now. Right. Henry nodded, looking up at Jade. Jade, you mind getting them set up with some of our stuff in storage? We should have a few green and orange pieces of clothing. And Claudine, what would you like? Jade nodded. Of course, Captain. The all-black look will only ever be allowed if Blackbeard somehow has a kid. Whatever works. But if I want to embrace my mum's side, crimson, and maybe a bit of purple, Claudine said. After all, had Mum had been a pirate captain too. Had the universe been different, she might have been a Hook rather than a Frodo. Though, maybe now she could call herself Rose, since that had been her mum's ship. Henry smiled as he watched the 4 girls walk off, Sammy taking the cat from Brooke's arms. What's with the cat? She's Claudine's, Sammy said, scratching Ash behind the ears. You know? Claudine's mum was my mum's captain, Henry, Sammy said, her voice soft. Mum wanted to make sure she got food when she could. Plus, she would sneak out to help with the twins when they were born. A few weeks after she started helping, Harriet and I saw she looked exhausted, so followed her to Dragon Hall, where we met Ash there. Speaking of, we should get Ash some food. Derek nodded. Right. Think the cat will eat some of Estelle's kibble? Ash would prefer fish, I'm guessing, Sammy said. I'll get us some food. Henry nodded. Thanks, Sammy. Anything for the captain's girl. Sammy grinned. Oh, speaking of which, Morgan and Brooke are coming out back to our crew? You're not swiping them, Henry. Of course not, Captain Smee, Henry said with a grin as Sammy was acting captain for Harriet's crew, with her being an Auradon. You want Claudine too? Sticking with your all-girl theme? Nah, the captainess belongs with you. That's not a word. Ryan chuckled. I think it is now. And the captainess is here. Look who's back and looking so much better. Nick gave a playful cheer. Henry turned around and fought to keep his jaw from dropping all the way to the deck. Claudine was wearing one of Mel's old tops and Harriet's old jacket and pants, but looked better in pirate garb than anyone had any right to. You all right? Claudine asked as she walked up to him. What? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. You look amazing. I mean, not that you didn't before, but I mean... Looks like the cat's got your tongue, Claudine teased as she gently kissed his cheek. Yes, she was kissing him a lot. So sue her. She could do that openly now, without the fear of Freddy finding out. And she was going to use that. Every chance she got, as long as Henry wanted it. Got a room! Oh, shut it! It's cute! Jade said with a smile on her face. Henry grinned back, looking at the crew. His family was safe. He could be with Claudine openly. Freddy was back on the isle where he belonged. Life was looking up. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh, I like that one. Liberation for the ladies! Yes! And, oh my god, a few things here that are pretty dark though. Brooke had a fling with Freddy. God, she was what, 14? Maybe even 13. Oh my god. Oh god. Ginny, I love you as an author, but that's really dark. And Dustin remembering the jumping. Jeez Louise. But I like the bit that they're getting the girls into pirate garb. Henry's reaction to Claudine is nice. I always like it when the girl smacks the guy in the face with beauty. That's just a thing I've always enjoyed. I'm closing this on a happy note. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.